Clint is formerly an FBI special agent who has dealt with terrorism. Jim Kavanaugh, formerly of the ATF. Guys, this is an interesting evolution in the conversation to have the Texas Land Commissioner and Rod Rosenstein, Clint, saying what you two have been saying for some time, that there is something that matters about calling it what it is and prosecuting it as what it is, and getting the public to understand that the danger of white nationalist domestic terrorism is the greatest threat most people face right now. Clint?
That's right. And just think back just a few years ago, this issue going into the election, President Trump, many of his supporters really were hot on militant extremism, militant Islamic extremism. Remember, they were pushing the message, call it what it is, and they need to call this what it is today. It is very clear that we have a white nationalist terrorism problem in this country. We have seen repeated attacks. Now we're seeing attacks inspiring each other. This is a similar pattern, and if we don't actually call it what it is, if we don't put these pieces together, if we don't demonstrate that these attacks are related, we are just hindering the federal, state, and local law enforcement's ability to preempt the next attack. We need to give them the ability to do that, and to do that, we have to network them just like we did against other terrorist groups. We built these joint terrorism task force after 9/11, and we got much, much better year by year. Over the last decade, we have been preempting in a very significant way in terms of international terrorism. We saw a massive response against ISIS. If you remember back the summer of 2016, think about this, Ali, we were worried about the ISIS Ramadan wave of attacks that was happening around the world. Those casualty numbers look exactly like what we've seen in this country this week, just this week here, between Gilroy, El Paso, and now with Dayton. Very similar patterns emerging. You've seen the FBI do a really great job over the past year of preempting many of these domestic attacks, but they are under-resourced for this fight, and they are restricted in many ways from going at it the same way. They don't have the legislation which allows them to be more preemptive. They don't have the ability to go at this from the social media perspective, which Jim and I were talking about last night. You have to be in these communities, these online communities, trying to detect how these lone individuals are now networking online to radicalize each other, to plot, to plan, to distribute their manifestos and build their ideology, to set the next attack that's moving forward. They have to be in those spaces, and they have to be in those spaces in a big way. And we're just treating it completely different because we won't put a name on what it is. I think it's great that we have people coming out today and saying, hey, this is what it is. Rod Rosenstein coming out. He just left the job, right? He was in this. He was seeing what was happening on the inside. I really appreciate him coming out today and saying, let's get ahead of this. Let's treat it as we know what it is, which is white nationalist terrorism.
Yeah, in fairness to the FBI, Jim, and to federal law enforcement, they've seen it. They're okay calling it what it is. It's really more of a political, governmental problem for us to acknowledge what white nationalism is when it intersects with domestic terrorism. And a point that you have made, Jim, is that there have been people writing these manifestos or these screeds or trying to protect white America for decades. Something is different about it now because of the speed and the community that can be built in the digital and the online the online world.
Right. It's the cyber world. That's what's changed. But, you know, to build on the discussion, it's what Churchill said, you know, give us the tools, we'll finish the job. I'd like to see the Congress act to help federal agents, which help the police. You know, the CIA and the FBI partnered extensively to tackle the worldwide threat against al-Qaeda after 9/11 and the military. I'd like to see the Congress come in and say, you know, we're gonna do the same thing domestically with the ATF and the FBI. We're gonna hire 100 cyber analysts for the ATF. ATF has them as well, and 100 for the FBI. We're going to hire 100 more agents for ATF and 100 more for the FBI, and we're going to hire 100 more federal prosecutors. That's 500 people, and we're going to put them at this problem, and we're going to loosen up these rules, and we're going to provide you with some of the most sophisticated technical equipment. And that's just the beginning of what we're going to do. We're going to do something, and then we're going to look at the red flag laws, the mental health laws, the firearms laws, and we're going to not restrict the Center for Disease Control from studying gun violence, which the gun lobby has done through legislation. That's an unbelievable fact, but it's true. that the doctors in America can't study gun violence because the gun lobby has put it in the law to restrict it in their budget. They've also restricted ATF and many other things, but I won't get into that. So the important things to realize are that much can be done, but we have a Senate that won't even allow debate. There'll be no bill. There'll be no action. There'll be no agents. There'll be no cyber specialists. I predict there'll be nothing because they just won't do it. They won't stand up. They're wholly owned subsidiaries of the gun lobby. They're spineless. You could have a report, Ali, tomorrow that 1,000 people were killed. I don't think they're going to move on it. They wouldn't move after Newtown. They wouldn't move after Parkland. This is not upsetting them. Their jobs are more important than these lives, apparently.
Clint and Jim, thank you, gentlemen. We will check in with you a little later. Clint Watts and Jim Kavanaugh for us.